Joining me today on the podcast is John Peters. John is CEO and co-founder of TrustedRentr, a web platform that simplifies the rental application process for both tenants and landlords. He joins the podcast to talk about the challenges and opportunities of starting a SaaS company. Now, John graduated from the University of Maine in 2016 with a degree in philosophy and economics and had a passion for entrepreneurship. In 2018, he started TrustedRentr with his co-founder, Steve Doman. They're working to create a new standard in renting. What TrustedRentr does is create trust between landlords and tenants with a new way to apply and screen applicants. And this allows TrustedRentr amazing benefits to tenants, such as increasing their credit score and lowering the initial cost of acquiring an apartment, and landlords lower the cost of evictions and missed payments, property damage, things like that. So it's a win-win for everybody. John, welcome to the Go for Launch podcast.
Great to be here.
Outstanding. Well, so you are in Maine today, right?
Yes, sir. Up in Old Town area.
All right. Well, I think you're my second Maine in a couple of months. I talked to John Furman from Bub and Mothers. So I like talking to people in Maine a lot. My dad was from Rhode Island, so I got a little bit of New England in my blood.
Yep. Yeah, and I just went through Top Gun with Bub and Mothers. Got finished up with that about a couple weeks ago now.
Oh, really? What is Top Gun? It sounds like an old Tom Cruise movie.
Yeah, well, it is. But it's like an accelerator in Maine that's put on through the University of Maine and their affiliates, and they have pitch competition. This year they were online, of course, because of everything that's going on. But yeah, so it's some good experience to learn how to pitch to investors and to possible people that are going to be on your platform, and then possibly raise some money.
All right, we got a lot to talk about because you are on here, and I was really intrigued to talk about you because you're starting a SaaS company, software as a service, and there's a lot of perks with that, pros and cons. So we'll get to all that. And so, to that point, John, tell us about how you and your co-founder Steve started to, decided to create an app, and was it always going to be what it became, or did you guys kick around a bunch of different ideas?
Yeah, so I had some experience in like the rental industry earlier before we started the company. My father owned some rental properties in Lewiston, Maine, and it sort of came together while I was looking to buy a new car, and I was learning about credit scores. And the initial idea was simply just a rent credit score, so it would track a tenant's history as they were renting, and then that would be able to be used to apply to landlords, and the landlord would have instant access to a tenant's rental history. But I knew I couldn't do it on my own, so I enlisted my good friend from college, Steve, and he's been an amazing help to me getting through this whole process. And he's helped also just kind of expand that idea to become a platform in itself. So it's sort of an area where landlords and tenants can come together on one platform rather than the sort of disjointed across the internet, wherever they tend to find listings, the way that apartments are sought for today.
Okay. So were either of you the technical wizard in the room, or were you both sort of the business majors? You were majoring in economics. What about Steve? Was he a IT guy or what?
No, he's actually getting his MBA right now and also doing a global policy master's degree.
Okay.
So he had some good connections that knew how to do the software development, and we also raised some grants and helped to go to the University of Maine and use resources there that are undergrad students there. And we were pretty excited about that because we really wanted to use talent in Maine in order to develop this company, because Maine's not really known for tech businesses.
Got it. And also, I think we want to clarify, too, that you were a student at the time. Is that right? Both of you guys were students at the University of Maine?
So I graduated in 2016, and so did Steve as well. We were there at the same time, but he continued on to get a master's degree there, and he's currently finishing that up right now at the University of Maine.
Okay. So once you guys, again, so you had some family experience in that industry. You also had a pain point that you knew that there could be something that could be solved with a new piece of software. How did you go about validating the concept and determining the viability of what became TrustedRentr?
Yeah, so we got a different grant to do market research on this product, but I mean, from my own experience and from learning about my dad's experience, I knew that this was definitely a pain point for landlords. So we went around to landlord associations in Maine and spoke to them and got input from them and had them fill out some surveys so that we could really understand where their pains were coming from and how we can most effectively help get rid of those pain points. But
Got
at the
it.
same, we also went to tenants and found out they had a lot of issues as well in the same area. So we knew we could fix both of those at the same time.
Nice. Now, do you feel like you're, being a young guy and sort of eager, do you think people were more willing to open up to you because they didn't see any sort of like, hey, this, older person trying to pick my brain. Like, I don't have time for this. Did you guys feel like that was an advantage?
So it was a little bit of both ends. Like sometimes people look at us and say, well, these are just young guys. What do they really know? But at the same time, then there's also people who are excited to help like a younger generation get started with something. So we've found both ends where people are kind of like pushing us off because we just graduated college, but also at the same time, a lot of people are really willing to reach out a hand and help us because we were trying to get something done and we wanted to do it even regardless of our age.
I love it. What about other competitors? I have to imagine there was already something in the market, right, that served either the landlords or the tenants. Were there things that immediately popped up that you said, these exist and we need to figure out how we can, do better than what's out there?
So the most common way to screen tenants right now is either to use a credit check or a background check, and there are many different services to do that type of thing. But there aren't any services currently right now that are following tenant rental history in order to use that as a screening tool. And we thought that would be the most important thing because tenants can either like fake their background or however they want to do it, use a brother or sister as a reference on their application. And we wanted it to be something that a landlord could really trust so that they can start that relationship off on a good point rather than always being skeptical about who's coming to you to rent your property.
Got it. So when you and Steve, I mean, it sounds like Steve had some resources, like some Zuckerberg types that knew how to code, right? Like buddies of his or whatever. So did you guys assemble that team in Maine and start to build it all yourselves? Or at any point, did you have to outsource any of that development in the early stages?
Yeah, so they're all in Maine right now. One of them's from Wisconsin, but he recently moved here. And he is also like his name's Nick, and he's mostly a back end developer, and he works for a company in Maine right now. So he's helping us part time. But he's been really great with other resources. He knows people who can help in the same way, and he's really like connected us with those people in order to help us move along.
Okay. So what did that progress look like did you kind of build a prototype at all in the beginning and get people to react to it? Or how long did it take for you to have a working version of this thing that you could take to a landlord or a tenant both and show it and say, hey, this is how it will work?
So it did take longer than we were hoping. I mean, apparently all projects do this, but since we use undergraduates at the University of Maine, it took longer to develop the product than we wanted to. Obviously, we would have rather it get out in the first week and then start getting people on. But we launched in the middle of August in the middle of August of 2020, and have gotten 40 units on right now. We're working on building that up. But the process went along smoothly. We did get a prototype out to show what it would look like in order to get feedback from landlords. And that was pretty important because if they thought it was unusable, then we would be spending time building it, and then people wouldn't want to use it in the first place. So
Got it. Yeah, I think that's the thing that would probably challenge a lot of people to build a software company. You need to really think more agile. Is that you can't just spend months cloistered away by yourselves building something and then introduce it to the market and go, voila, here it is. Hey, what do you think? Because a lot of times people will go, I don't need that or whatever. So it sounds like you were sort of more iterative, right? And getting that early feedback, that's the way to do it. So congratulations to make sure that you're building what somebody will actually use and value and need.
Yeah. And we used like different like SketchUp platforms in order to just kind of picture what this application would look like and how it would function. And we found that that was a really cheap and simple way to set up not even a prototype. It's just kind of like a mock-up of what it would be. And that helped us save a lot of time.
Yeah, that's great because you mentioned Sketch. I'm a huge fan of that, and there's things like Figma and even others that will allow you, especially I imagine because of the nature of the business, it has to be a mobile first, mobile friendly app, right?
For sure. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, the landlords maybe can use iPads and stuff, but your average renter, if they're out and about, they're going to be using a mobile app for sure. And there's cool tools that you can totally mock this stuff up and it looks exactly like something you download out of the Google Play or App Store.
Yeah, it was helpful.
You mentioned that you guys got some grants through the University of Maine or state funds or what have you. Was there any other, did you guys have to kick in or go get friends and family, or was there ever any talk of raising capital, doing a venture raise or anything of that nature so far?
We're hoping to get to that point in the near future, just because to scale something like this, in order to get it to be the most effective, it's gonna take some capital. We did a lot of our own money, and my father has been able to help with some of the legal work because he's a lawyer as well. So it's been a lot of friends and family have been like contributing to what we're doing, and it's been a pretty low cost to develop beyond the grants. And we did put some money into that. There's a local state affiliated organization called MTI, which is Maine Technology Institute, who gave us a grant for around $20,000, and that helped us really get to where we are today.
All right. So how many folks are working on it full time at this point?
It would just be Steve and I for like full time dedicated. The rest of the people are basically doing it in their part time.
Got it. Now, tell us about what Trusted Renter, how does it work, and who pays for it? Like, I think it's free for the renter, right? The person looking for an apartment. So the landlords pay the money. Is that accurate?
Yep. So we're doing like a yearly subscription fee for the landlords, and we plan to quickly start doing rental payments over the platform, which we're mostly targeting smaller time landlords who have like 1 to 25 units. It can get a little larger than that. And they usually have trouble having like one place where they go for rental payment processing. So we'll also be adding that in and then taking a small percentage of the rental payment through that in order to cover the costs of doing that. That generates revenue for us as well.
Okay. And so if I got it right, looking on the website, as far as what the landlords pay, it's not that expensive, right? It's not like thousands of dollars a year or something, right? I think it was what, $125 a year or something. Is that?
Yeah, it's about $150, and we're onboarding people really early on. We're giving them discounts because we obviously want to get people using it. But yeah, $150 for a year for the average landlord is a big money saver, especially if we help them avoid even just one eviction, because that can cost landlords thousands of dollars.
Sure.
Just to litigate and go through that.
And you were saying, John, that before they might have been using Been Verified or one of those services to just do a background check on somebody, make sure they're not a criminal or what have you. And so is that the type of thing? What information is Trusted Renter helping those landlords vet so they don't get the wrong renter in the spots?
Yeah, so the whole process of screening a tenant had been very like person to person, right? Each landlord would do something different. And a bunch of landlords that we talked to would even just kind of say they were going to do a background check to see if the tenant interest kept there, or was worried that that would turn out bad in order to tell if they wanted to get them or not. So it was never really like a useful thing. Trusted Renter, it tracks it through the landlord. So as the tenant is at the landlord's property, they'll be able to report an issue if it comes up. So let's say tenant misses a payment that month, the rent, the landlord would simply just mark that down on the Trusted Renter score, and it would affect the tenant's score, and they would be able to either come to some sort of fix of the issue, or it would be there for the rest of the time. So when a tenant then moves on to the next landlord, that information is immediately available, and they can have a conversation about those problems from the past if they'd like to, or move on to a different tenant in general.
I love that. It sounds like, yeah, as the app grows and you get into more of that ecosystem, the landlords especially would value that because, like you said, if there's a way that you can tell quickly, it's like when you buy a car and you can look up the VIN number and see, was this car ever in a wreck, right? Like, hey, I don't want to buy a lemon that was just, rear ended and they made it look beautiful, but it's been in a wreck. Maybe there's something wrong with it. If this person's sort of like, if I know their credit score sucks, not only that, but they've stiffed other landlords, I don't want to rent to this person.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, credit scores don't always show a full picture of who someone is. Like someone could have gone through rough times, they have a really bad credit score, but they've turned their life around and have been paying rent like every month, right as they should be. So it's really, we want to show that it's the tenant's behavior while they're renting. It's not other aspects of their life. That's really important. And this is the best way to sort of show that and have tenants really take more of control over what landlords are seeing when they're screening. Because I mean, it's often, it feels like you're joining like the police corps or something. Like they're going into your family history or something like that. They're really doing a full background check when you don't necessarily need that for just a tenant renting an apartment.
Right. And does it happen fairly quickly within the app that the information gets exchanged and comes back?
Yeah, so if a tenant wants to apply to a property, they simply click the apply button and that information is sent over first thing. So the score that comes along with it, along with the usual application that's filled out for renting an apartment, is all there, all in the first spot. So the landlord has everything right away.
I think that's an advantage too, because I've used some of those things like been verified before just to look somebody up, like an employee or whatever. And I think sometimes they throw in these fake counters to make you sit there and think it's doing something highly unusual when it's done and it's just making you sit there for 2 minutes watching all these progress bars go by. And it's like, just give me the information. Right. So it's probably good. Again, these guys don't have time to sit there and stop for every single person that they're vetting, right? All day long. Could be dozens of people.
Yeah, and it can get pretty expensive. Like a background check can cost anywhere from $20 to $50 per person. And usually the landlords put that onto the tenants in order to pay that. So we're really hoping that we can eliminate a lot of the upfront fees that landlords tend to charge tenants in general, so that this whole service is just that one click and you're applied, and you don't need to worry about application fees ever again.
Got it. Now, like a lot of industries, though, I'm sure yours is no different. Your dad's been in the business for a long time. A lot of people that have real estate and have been renting to people, prior to the internet, of course, everything was paper based and not a lot even stored even in Excel spreadsheets or whatever. But over the last, let's say 20 years, things have come a long way. But I have a feeling that you probably still have a lot of landlords that like, we've done it the same way forever. And have you encountered any of that resistance where you're showing people and they're like, I don't know. Tell me about that. And how do you overcome that sort of reluctance to try something new, even when you can overcome the price and say, look, it only costs $150 compared to what you might be doing these individual background checks on a one-off basis?
Yeah, so there have definitely run into people who just kind of averse to technology and have technological advances in this area. Especially with the demographic, the average landlord is probably around 50, 60 years old, but that is changing. It is getting younger as the ages flip for who's buying and selling rental property. We've overcome that by having some good landlords who are really advocates for what we're doing, help get them on board, and that's really what it takes. Landlords are very closely connected to one another in a lot of situations. So if you get one that's really on board and has like some good things to say about what we're doing and how we're doing it and has a good experience with what we've been doing, that's really the best way to overcome that sort of fear of starting something new.
Got it. Now, what about on the renter side? If I'm a bad renter and I start getting dinged and all of a sudden I'm coming up and people are like denying me, how do I fix myself? Is there a process you can go through to get your score back up?
Yeah, we're looking at a lot of different ways to help educate tenants as this application grows. The main way is that these things don't stick with them forever. So there's a time frame, just like in a credit check, or if you apply for a new credit card, it shows up and 2 years later it's gone. So we have the same sort of functionality as that. But there's also just such a huge amount of properties to be rented to that we know that even if some landlords don't want to do it, don't want to pick up a certain tenant, they know that they will find a property either way. But I think it's also a thing that even if their score is bad, it's a conversation starter rather than just an immediate cutoff. So a landlord will be able to talk to somebody and have like an actual conversation about, oh, what happened in this situation, get a clear picture of who this person is, get an understanding of their situation, and they can move forward.
Got it. But you do have to have that sort of mutually symbiotic relationship. The landlords and the tenants are going to have to use the platform, right, for it to work well. So you've got a challenge to get adoption across the board on both sides. So to that point, how are you marketing the company, and what do you find to be most effective there?
So for the tenant side, we're definitely marketing the benefits that it can bring to tenants, and that's specifically the elimination of those upfront fees, and then also how we're helping them build their credit score over time. So we're also building into this platform a way that landlords can submit their rental payments to the credit bureaus. And over just like a year of using TrustedRentr, that could increase someone's credit score by maybe even 100 points, and that could be a huge cost saver in the future if they're looking to then buy a house or something else, so maybe a car loan, anything like that. On the landlord side, it's really a network effect, and we're pushing to get to landlord associations in order to get the word out, and then it's really just having the tenants will eventually move, they'll apply to new places, and hopefully they'll use TrustedRentr to apply to those places because of its simplicity, and we've really made it a platform that can spread easily by just being able to apply anywhere with TrustedRentr.
Got it. Now you mentioned some stuff, and I know there's a lot of privacy and data issues concerned, especially in this case where there's an exchange of money between different parties. Are you allowing people to opt in to share their data with potentially other third-party providers? For example, you mentioned if somebody's renting properties, at some point in time, they might graduate and decide they want to buy a property. And I would think that a lot of real estate companies would be very interested in knowing who the best paying renters are who would qualify to buy, right? Is that on your roadmap to be able to share that type of information potentially with a lender, for example, a mortgage company, but with the permission of that renter, him or her?
Yeah, for sure. We've had some interest from some local banks about this sort of data. It would definitely be with the consent of the tenant, of course. And they've mentioned that just in the mortgage process, that this sort of information about do they constantly pay their rent is extremely valuable information. And we think it could be a huge spot for us to use later on down the road.
Definitely. Back to the marketing question there for a second. Is it mostly digital, or are you guys running Facebook ads, Instagram, anything, doing public relations, anything in particular tactically that you're doing is working better or worse than other things you've tried?
Yeah, so we found that reaching out to landlords right now is our best move. We will be doing a lot of ads in the future, and that we think will be significantly better for tenants specifically, because they tend to use those social platforms more often. Getting the ads out to like Facebook Marketplace will be effective as well. But just getting into those meetings where landlords are all together and they're sort of relying on each other and relying on this association is a big benefit to us, and it's helped a lot.
Yeah, I imagine actually, good point, because there's probably trade-in associations and things like that serve that landlord market, right? That probably have been impacted by COVID like everything else. So now you're just having to do a lot of one-on-one reach outs.
Yeah, it's been a challenge, but they're starting to do those meetings more, though the attendance is lower. So that's not as always helpful, but just having the association sort of get our information out there and sort of say that they approve of us is always a big benefit.
Got it.
We're not just trying to scam people. We're not just trying to collect money and run away. They have some sort of way to understand who we are.
I like that. So what advice, John, would you have for other people that have thought about or in the midst of planning to start a software company? Because now you've been at it now for a couple of years. Looking back, what would you say you would do differently, or advice you would give somebody?
Yeah. So my advice would be when you're looking at a scope of a project, to really refine the scope of your projects in order to like set really specific goals and milestones for as you're building your prototype and then your finished project. We found that while we were doing that, we would have really large projects, and it would almost get confusing with how we were trying to build this. And just narrowing that down and really working on thing by thing in order to check off those boxes would have helped us get this product out sooner and get it to the market faster. And I think that would be like a huge benefit to us in the future.
That's good advice. Like we were talking about earlier, I'm a big fan of Agile and just, the Scrum type of methodology where you define much shorter sprints of activity, and you're not planning something out that's going to take months and months of programming before anything is revealed. You're doing it in 2-week increments or whatever, so that you just say, for now, let's develop the home screen and see what that looks like. Then get feedback. Then when we move on to the login screen, whatever. So good advice there. Anything else as far as, doing it yourself versus would you have ever thought about hiring overseas programmers because it might be cheaper or whatever?
We have thought about that before, but we've been really dedicated to sort of building our local economy up, and we may turn to that in the future. But we just really worked on building relationships around who we knew, who could help us, and who was willing to sort of put the word out for us. And we think that that's pretty important to how we got to where we are today. That we were willing to ask for help and willing to have people sort of help us in exchange.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. Well, listen, we've been talking to John Peters, CEO and co-founder of TrustedRentr. John, where can people find out more about the company? And make sure you spell it out, which I'll also have over at the show notes page at goforlaunch.io/show106.
Yeah, so they can go to TrustedRentr.com, and that's TrustedRentr.com. So it's just without that final E on TrustedRentr. And that's where they can find all that information and get in contact with us if they're interested.
And can people go to the app stores and download the app now, or how does that work?
So we don't have a phone app right now, but our website is fully usable on the Apple and Android devices.
Got it.
We will roll that out soon, though.
Excellent. Well, hey, if you're looking for an apartment or you're a landlord and you're having frustrations with people being vetted properly, go check out TrustedRentr, RENTR without the E.com. And John will hook you up. John, thanks so much for being on the Go for Launch podcast. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and good luck to you and your team.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great.